It's time for a reality check.
We're here to deconstruct health and fitness trends and provide tangible advice so you can become 1% better with each choice starting today. Welcome back to Reality Check. We are your hosts, Jess and Jill, and we've got all kinds of fun guests lined up lately. So we have another one today, and I'm so excited to have you on. And this is just one of the beauties of the internet and social media. I always say it's a blessing and a curse, but the blessing is that we get to connect with some really cool people and professionals in the space. And all of a sudden you have friends all over the country and world that you just jive and check in with each other, and you've never even met in person, and it's lovely. So I would love for you to introduce yourself, give the full rundown, and how she got into the space and how we connected is funny and probably won't be surprising at all to the people that listen to this podcast, but I would love for you to give the rundown and introduce yourself and tell everyone about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me. My name is Mariam Baxter, and I am from Augusta, Georgia. So in the South, and love that aspect. I'm a mama of 3 daughters. They are 10, 8, and 6 and keep us busy with all of the makeup and girly things. But I made the connection with Jillian and Jess through Danielle from Snap Macro. So it's really a funny story when I was trying to navigate the online space and really what I wanted to do with my account, what I wanted that to look like. I started following Danielle and started making her recipes once a week and tagging her. And we kind of started chatting a little bit, and my kids loved all of her meals, and I did too, because they were super simple and easy, tasted delicious, and had, amazing macros. And I reached out to her just kind of figuring out, do you have a code on your website? Like, how can we kind of engage a little bit here? And she was so sweet, and obviously, that's not how she, creates revenue on her website, but she gave me some tips, and we just kind of built this relationship, which is one of those really cool things, like you were mentioning about the online space, since she's in Alaska. And so when she was developing recipes for her first cookbook, she and I were able to kind of go back and forth, and I was a secret taste tester and gave her feedback on some of the meals. And so that was really fun for me. And hard to keep it a secret because they were delicious. But now they're out and open to the public. So if anybody is looking for some amazing recipes, of course, we always recommend those as well.
Love that so much. And obviously, we are huge Snap fans. It's funny, before Danielle entered our community as, working with us, I was like, I swear we're not doing this on purpose. But like when you see our entire client community just like sharing all of their Snap recipes every week, it's genuine. Like they've
been doing that for the last 3 years. And then she joined, and it's so fun. Nobody for a long time realized that Danielle was Snap. Yeah. And they would still share her recipes. And we
like when you see your teacher outside of school, she's
still didn't know it was her. Yeah. And then eventually, like, one client texted and was like, "Is that her? Is that Snap? Like, she's famous in our little world."
Yeah, it's amazing. So I love that you had that connection. I think she's wonderful, and obviously we're huge fans of her website, recipe, all of the things too.
Yeah,
and like you said, so family friendly. Like no kid complaints ever with those recipes, which is also incredible when we're working with so many busy women and busy moms.
Exactly. And she doesn't feel like, she feels like she's just your friend, and so I think that's something that she does super well, and just is so genuine with her account and how she guides that.
Yeah. I love space too. That's great.
How did you originally can you tell us more about your whole journey with health and fitness and how you got into coaching originally?
Yeah, I love that question. So I lost my dad when I was 22. He died of sudden cardiac arrest, and it was really tragic. I was definitely a daddy's girl and had never experienced loss of life to that level. And it really did kind of shock me. And so I realized how fragile life really is. And then my mom has had a multiple sclerosis diagnosis for over 35 years. And more so recently, she's been recovering from a stage 4 sacral wound. And so she's lost her ability to move and independence. And so I have a front row seat to just the gift and the blessing that health truly is. And as a mom, it is my deep desire to not just have like physical goals or anything like that, but to also be able to pass down quality education to my daughters on how food is actually designed to support our bodies and kind of bleed out some of the noise that they may hear. Now, I do think it's gotten so much better over the years. And I think a lot of people, just like you, we can, contribute to that shift in the industry. But it is really cool to just be able to see the direct impact that's happened on my life and be able to translate that into an easier way for other women and other moms to make those shifts.
I love that so much. And I feel, I know we were talking about this a little bit before we kicked off, but I feel like we don't talk about enough, like, we always talk about like our relationship with food and the scale for ourselves and making those like internal changes, but that internal dialogue, just the littlest comments, I think, that come out a lot, and you don't realize how much they stick with you, right? Like there are so many things and situations I can think of as a kid, hearing my mom and like other women, that were older than me saying things about their body and their food and seeing that dynamic. And we just like inherently pick those up and all of a sudden carry that belief. And it's like, now we're undoing all of these patterns for a lot of women. So I always use like the breakdown of like, if you wouldn't say it to your kid, don't say it to yourself, right? But like, it's really eye-opening to see you're not just not telling your kid like, oh, that food's bad or you're fat or saying mean things, but it's also like, you can't let them hear them say things like about yourself or about your food or your food choices, or there shouldn't be all of this noise around the food that fuels our body, and creating that healthy relationship with food. And I do think that in one episode, maybe way back in the beginning of this podcast, Jess and I touched on, I think we had two very different experiences as kids around the way that we were raised around food. And mine was like, doing Weight Watchers at 17 and seeing my mom go through phases of dieting and not, and exercising and not. Whereas Jess's mom had a totally different approach in a really healthy way. And obviously, like, we all have our own battles and things, but I would love to kind of hear a little bit more about like your approach or just the way that you like educate around that topic for your kids and also like the clients that are moms that you work with too around this topic.
Yeah. And I think part of that is not just on what we say, but the way that we carry ourselves as an indicator of what we're telling ourselves. And I think a lot of that confidence shifts the more education that we have behind what our bodies need. And so one thing that I, get asked a lot is just, what are some things that you do in your house while your kids are watching? Because they're like sponges. They pick everything up. And it was funny. I remember a lot of times we dress up for Halloween as like a family. So we pick a theme. And one of my daughters was like, let's go as nutrition. I will be an avocado for the fat. You can be bacon for, the protein. And then they can be eggs. And then, and so at that moment I was like, okay, I don't know if this is really exciting or a little too much that my kids are picking out their macros. But for me, I never knew the breakdown of food growing up. And you go to school and they give you the little pyramid and all the things, but it's not, deeper. And so I have our, kitchen scale on our counter, and it's just part of my day-to-day life. And they don't hear me talk about like I'm in a diet or I'm in a maintenance phase or anything like that, but more so, how am I getting enough food? So when they see me, weighing out my food or something like that, that's a good opportunity for me to educate them on, well, this is, an appropriate amount of protein that I need. Most women don't eat a lot of protein. And we really try to center our meals around that protein choice. But the other thing that I really love about having that scale out is I use it not just when I'm weighing out meals, but when we're baking together or when when I'm making sourdough. Like, they see me using it through every aspect of life. And the reality is, we measure so much in our lives. So why would food be any different? And then on the flip, yeah, go ahead.
I love that you're talking about it as, okay, it's just this tool that we're using in these different ways. And part of those ways are us having social time and connection together, of cooking together, right? It's not, I think you could take the exact same circumstance and message it in a different way, and it could be healthy or unhealthy, right? You saying, well, mom's making sure she's getting enough protein in, right? Protein helps us so that we can get strong and fast and all these things, right? Whereas somebody else might have that exact same food scale on their counter and say, like, well, I need to make sure I don't overeat because my genes aren't fitting. And in that circumstance, it's very unhealthy, right? I have a scale. I don't weigh myself very frequently. We're moving right now, and my kid the other day hopped on the scale, and she said, "Wow, look, I'm getting so strong." Because the number is more. And it's like, that is her perception of what a scale shows us is cool. I'm growing. That means I'm getting strong, right? So I think the how you communicate and the messaging is so, so, so very important, because I think there's a lot of people who are quick to judge and write off, like, oh no, tracking food's unhealthy because that can lead to some food relationship issues or this or that. And it's like, well, in what context, right? For anything, what's the context that we're doing it within?
Yeah, and one thing that my husband and I are pretty big on is, if we commit to something and we say we're going to do it, we do it with our kids. And so when we make those promises to ourselves, it's just as important to follow through, because they're watching that too. So not just the direct action of something we say to them, but what are we saying to ourselves? And I think that's really important when navigating those healthy boundaries in the kitchen when your kids are watching. But one thing my girls love to do is they love to zero out the scale and measure things. And I think that's just so cool, because they're learning things in school about counting money and, what weight actually accumulates to in different areas. And so they're really seeing that tangible piece everywhere in their lives.
Before we started recording, we touched on this a little bit, and you also mentioned, I also don't weigh everything, right? Like, I'm using this when I am specifically making a recipe. There's other times that my kids just see me grab a bag of dried fruit or whatever. So I don't know if you want to share that more too, but just that it's also a balance. It is not okay, I have to track every little bit of everything in my life.
Right. And I try, depending on what my goals are during whatever season I'm in, I try to really lean into like using the scale for main meals. And then, if we're having a movie night as a family, I'm not getting the scale out to weigh out popcorn, or something like that. So they do see me grab, dried fruit or grab granola from the pantry without weighing it. And I think showing that balance is really important too, because just like what you were saying, Jess, it can go one or two ways, just depending on the way that you're communicating it and the specific words that you use. So for daughters specifically, in my conviction is to make sure that they do see that balance, because I think as you age, you realize you can very easily put yourself in one category or the other. And I don't want them to walk through that and to struggle with that. So I want them to look back on their childhood and say, like, okay, well, mommy made sure she was getting enough protein, but we also had a lot of fun when the ice cream truck came through the neighborhood, and things like that. And I think that's really valuable when you're raising kids.
Yeah. I also love your background with, unfortunately, what you've had to go through and watch your parents go through. I think that sometimes from the outside, somebody might I'm looking at you in a sleeveless shirt right now, and you're ripped, right? You're super healthy. You're super fit looking, right? And I think some people who might hire you as a coach or might see you at the gym or something might look and be like, oh, well, she has these physique goals. And it's like, they don't understand that this is a deep down thing, that like exercise and nutrition is your prescription to avoid chronic illness, to help with your longevity, to help with your quality of life. How is that with you, with clients? Because like all of us are online coaches, and we know our goal. I mean, most people come to us because they want physique change. And our goal is, oh, I hope by the end of our time coaching together, they realize that this is so much bigger than physique.
So much. I think that's one of the most life-giving things about coaching is we know what they're truly going to get out of it. When someone is applying and wants to start coaching, all they're thinking about is weight loss or, shifting composition. But we know we're actually giving them longevity. And me, I have this mentality. Obviously we can't control everything about our lives or what, cards we get dealt, but the things that we can control play a big role in that. And I was even just thinking the other day, I went to the beach, into a duck donut shop because that's like one of my favorite donuts.
Just had it last week. They are my jam.
We don't have them locally. So we were on vacation and the guy, was there. I had on a sleeveless shirt. And for those listening, my arms are not ripped, but he was like,
yeah,
he was like, man, you must spend lots of hours in the gym. And in my mind, I was thinking, actually, it's only for a week. And, I have found that balance where previously I didn't know that muscle mass meant definition. So I was going to every single group fitness class. I just had a baby. I just wanted my body back. And I was looking, the way our gym is set up, the group fitness is on top and then the lifting area is on the bottom. And so I was looking at all these girls who were ripped and I was like, oh man, they look bulky. I'm never going to do that. And then I was just exhausted. And then I shifted and I was like, all right, I'm going to give this thing a shot. And my body transformed and I realized to work smarter, not harder. And I think that's something too in coaching, especially for moms, being able to guide them through that process. Not that they have to shift everything about what they love doing, but that there is a smarter way to do it versus what they think they have to do in their mind.
You can do less and maintain and sustain better results without feeling like you have to just grind and burn more calories. We talk about just the value of adding muscle mass over and over and over and over again, but it doesn't mean you have to strength train 6 days a week, right? Like a lot of times you can get a really, really optimal outcome from 3 really good programmed lifts a week.
Exactly. And I don't know about y'all, but one of the things that I love too is just kind of hearing after working with a client for, let's say, maybe 3 months, it's like, I didn't realize this was that easy. Like, not that it doesn't require sacrifice and discipline and building that, but the fact that the small shifts that we make are actually very minor shifts that build and build and build and add up to the actual results that they're looking for. But realizing, okay, this can be sustainable. It doesn't have to be something where I eliminate, a list of foods or whatever that looks like. And then kind of circling back to the kids side of that, I think that's incredibly valuable because what I love the most about Danielle's recipes is that I wasn't making separate meals for myself. And I really wanted my girls to see I'm eating everything you're eating. I'm just prioritizing different things depending on whatever season I'm in.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think it's also that you're showing them the correlation of like fueling your body and eating lots of food. Like Jess said, measuring doesn't mean it's an unhealthy relationship. Like you're eating a lot of food and you're getting stronger and you're building muscle. And Jess's example about the scale and making that association. And I think it's so underrated. And I also love what you said too about the shifts we make, because I'm sure we can speak for a large majority of our clients in that they always come to us feeling stuck because they're trying to make these massive shifts thinking they need to make a massive impact because they want results now, but they don't realize that the little shifts compound so quickly that that's how you actually make the big shifts versus like flipping your whole life upside down and then you end up 1 step forward and 2 steps back. So I think it's
I actually just this morning, so I was looking on your Instagram, Mariam, and I screenshotted this and I sent it to our client chat in Slack. You shared this post that said, focus on the plan and you'll lose the weight. Focus on the weight and you'll lose the plan. Like anytime you are actually changing your healthy inputs, you are adding muscle, you are adding nutrients, it's going to take time. This is not going to be an overnight thing. You probably won't lose weight right away, right? But over time, it's like the compound effect where then eventually you transform. I know Jill talks about this analogy a lot, but it's like clocking in and clocking out just to see the scale change versus investing. And now this passive income is coming in because you have this muscle mass that's working for you. So you can go into the donut shop and continue to maintain your lean physique and your health, right? Like
Your
at the end of the day,
jacked
it's all about
like-
health.
She's like, I'm not jacked at all. And it's like, you absolutely.
And I'm like, arm goals over here.
I'm like, BRB, I have to go to the gym. I'll be right back. Thanks for the Thursday motivation for me to work out upper body today. But no, it's so
I also want to say, like, you look lean and healthy, and like it's about health, not physique is not the priority. Physique is a side effect of health. But can you share with us too how your perception changed? Because when you were on those cardio machines looking down, you were like, I don't want to get bulky, this and that. Do you not find now it's not bulky? You're able to stay lean all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and exactly. It's really hard to explain because you put in the sacrifice and you make the shifts. And then exactly like what you're saying, you get to this level where it actually allows for the balance. So, being able to like maintain and still go into Duck Donuts and know that like I've built this habit, this lifestyle that still allows me to support the mom that I want to be, the physique that I want to have, and still kind of navigate towards that balance piece. But one thing that's so funny is I am training for a half marathon right now. And so before I was telling y'all that I was doing all the group fitness classes, cardio queen, all the things, it actually made me really dislike cardio. And it was kind of a struggle because it put me into the opposite camp where I was like only lifting. I only want to lift. It gave me the comp that I wanted. I'm able to like see this, positive change in my energy and all these things. And then I kind of had this, just reality check that my dad died of a heart disease, and I need to do something to support that. And so then even just thinking through my mind, like I need to incorporate more running. And this is before I decided that I wanted to do the half. You kind of think through what is this going to do to my physique, and how does this like shift what I need to be eating nutritionally? What does this look like? And I think for moms, we almost are too afraid to change things or to adventure into challenges that may push us out of our comfort zone because we have achieved what we want and what we want to accomplish. And so I can happily report that my physique has not changed. And I feel so good about being able to have that endurance piece as well. And to know that if any of my daughters at any point in time says, Mommy, let's go run a mile, I can do that without using my inhaler, which I do have asthma. But,
But you're also, I'm sure, fueling your body to appropriately like satisfy and fuel those runs. And I'm sure that you're doing obviously it's hard with little kids, but I'm sure you're doing as much as you can to optimize sleep and recovery time between, right? You're not doing it as a form of, I'm going to abuse my body because I need to get smaller. You're doing it as, hey, I want healthy movement in my life, right? So again, it's like the why behind it and the messaging. You could take the exact same activity and it could be healthy or it could be detrimental depending on how you're utilizing it.
For sure.
Love that so much. And then what, tell us like in terms of your business and your coaching, like who do you help and like, what do you do? And what's your, like what's your jam in terms of like helping people? Like, obviously I know that we've talked about, kids nutrition, and that's like, I don't know, personal / business passion, right? Like I'm sure you help clients with that too, but, tell us a little bit about like your process and like what you do.
Yeah. So I only work with women. And so most of my clients are moms, and I think it's just easy to relate and know that one of the things I love teaching is to plan ahead. Obviously y'all know that I'm a planner. But part of the reason why I think that's so important is because life happens and we're going to have to pivot no matter what. We know that for sure. And then we bring in kids to the equation, and that flexibility has to be even greater. And so if we have a plan, we know where to pivot from. If we don't have a plan at all, it's kind of like we're just wandering around and, trying to just play catch up all the time. And that adds stress when we could just spend 10 minutes the night before planning out what our next day looks like from a scheduling standpoint, but also what are we going to eat nutritionally? So I work a lot with clients on developing this plan with what their overall week looks like, reminding them that I think this is kind of a side note, but I think there's this like unspoken pressure for moms specifically to come up with this incredible meal to serve at night. And it's like, all you need is a protein
rotisserie chicken, some blueberries. Yeah, I'm like the queen of like low maintenance. We have some colors on our plate. We've got a protein on our plate. We're good to go.
Exactly. And just overcomplicating things. So we really work on the simplicity side of things. And then once we master that, sure, get a little fancy with your meals. Not that food has to be boring, but I do try to help my clients see the actual breakdown of how simple it can be. Or if you're, carting 3 kids to different practices in one night and dinner is on the go, where is a place that you can go that's actually going to serve your body well versus making you feel terrible? So I work through a lot with that. And then, of course, not everyone is a mom, but women specifically, I just love being able to educate them and see what we were talking about earlier. Like everyone comes in wanting composition changes, wanting weight loss, but then seeing it actually click in their mind that, okay, this is not that hard. And everything that I just need to cut out the noise and lean into who I've hired to give me their expertise and their guidance and follow them. There are so many times where I'll get from non-clients, I'll get questions like, hey, should I take this supplement? Hey, should I do this? Hey, should I do that? And it's like, why? Why do we need that? Can you give me a little bit of information on maybe what symptoms you have? Like, are you just going to take a random supplement you get served from an ad? And it's that mental piece that I love about coaching, because they're able to really see the value and the benefit and having someone walk alongside you and guide you throughout the whole process. I think that's something that's missing from some of these bigger diets is we don't have anybody we can talk to or ask questions to. And so having that one-on-one piece is what I love about coaching.
Yeah, I think we touch on that a lot with our team, right? Our team of coaches. And as we train them and optimize and dial in their skill sets too, I always remind them to be curious with clients as you approach conversations and check-ins and all of those things. And it's always, for one, we're always on the same team, right? We all want the same end result, but I'm always like, be curious with them of like, sometimes we have to help guide them to awareness that they didn't even know was like missing, right? Like you said, I'll have a client come to me that says like, what greens powder do you recommend? And I'm like, well, what made you want to take greens powder, right? Like, what's your intention behind this thought or this decision? So I think that's so great. And then circling back to the, carting kids around for sports. And fortunately, my child has switched from baseball to soccer, which is so much easier. But as a baseball mom, that was most nights of my week. And we had like 3 options. It was like a local restaurant, a Wendy's, and a tropical smoothie. And I'm like, you're out there for hours at a night on the field. So through that literal and figurative season of our life every year, it was, am I front loading nutrients and I'm indulging a little bit at Wendy's? Is it that I'm having a smoothie and I'm front loading some calories? Is it that we are bringing our food to the sidelines for a night? But we always were planning that ahead of time. And it wasn't the same thing every night. I didn't love eating Wendy's every night, but that was like Mason's treat for the week, was that he got like a Wendy's Frosty and his chicken nuggets, right? And like, that's what we did for baseball and such. So, you're right. And that clients tend to overcomplicate it, or they think, well, this is too hard. I have too much going on. It's like, no, you just have to plan a little bit. That's it. It doesn't have to be.
You don't have to be perfect. Yeah. You don't have to be perfect. Yeah. Maybe we have to make more sacrifices or more planning during the time that we're home, because we know that we have these activities 4 days a week, right? At night. So maybe our mornings and our snacks and our lunches are a little more dialed, right? So you talked about people randomly messaging you like, hey, what supplement should I take? Or what about this? Or what about that? And oftentimes those types of questions are people are looking for some sort of quick grab to get quick results, right? We always come back to what are the most important things? What's that foundation to the house? So I guess I don't know if we want to end on this or talk about this now, but I would love to hear from you. What are your most importance? What's the baseline that you try to set in terms of tangible things that whoever's listening to this could take away and they could start to implement right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think starting off, number one is consistency, because anytime you're trying to make changes, it's going to be challenging, but the more consistent you can be, and not perfect, but just consistently moving the needle forward, you're going to see progress no matter what. And then as far as tangible things, the foundational pillars that I try to coach through are making sure you're getting your protein in. That's like my number one. I think a lot of people's number one thing. Hydration, stress management, quality sleep. What am I missing? Quality nutrition. Those are really just like the foundational principles that I think you can build a really solid house on. Get fancy later with going into different phases of periodization, all of that. But if you're consistent with those things, you're going to feel better first. And that typically engages motivation, allows you to build that consistency. And then you start seeing the wheels kind of turning and you get excited about it. And then your body comp starts changing. But then having that guidance on having someone like coach you through those phases is really important. But I think, the way that I coach is we start off with those foundations. So we spend a lot of time just making sure we are consistent in the foundational phase, and then we build from there.
And then in terms of, I guess, with exercise, because you had mentioned cardio versus lifting, maybe a combination of both. And I say this because I think a lot of people are like, well, I am consistent. I'm doing all the right things, but actually they're not doing the right things, right? Maybe they're under fueling or they're only training cardio. So what would you say in terms of that, the exercise piece too? What does consistency look like? How many days? Things like that.
I'm a big fan of 3 to 4 strength training, and then making sure that you're getting your daily movement in, walking, and then adding in cardio as you can, I think is really important. I think cardio gets a bad rap. I mean, I definitely went through, like I mentioned, a season of that. But a lot of times people don't realize it doesn't have to be hours on, the elliptical. It can be moving your body, going out on a nature walk, just incorporating some type of physical activity from that standpoint. But I think, strength training should absolutely be something in every female's routine. And I think depending on what your schedule looks like, 3 or 4 days of that a week, like you mentioned earlier, that would be sufficient.
Love that.
I love that. Okay. Very aligned with how we coach.
Yes.
100%. Got to meet them where they're at. So tell us where we can find you on social, all the things.
You can find me at Mariam Baxter Coaching on Instagram. I'm actually in the process of launching a team like you guys. So it's really cool to be on this podcast and just watching from afar. You guys are inspirational to me, but Crave Wellness is my company name. And part of that name just comes from, I'm sure you guys hear this too, but month 2, 3, clients are saying, I crave, higher quality foods, or I'm craving my protein now, I'm craving my daily walks. And for me, and kind of my heart and my passion, like I've expressed, it's really allowing our bodies to crave the things that we were designed to crave. And I think that is kind of, pushing the needle forward with overall wellness.
Beautiful. Love that so much. So we'll tag your socials in the episode notes so everyone can come find you and follow. But thank you so much for sharing all this. I think this was such an important topic and something that we haven't really touched on the podcast yet in terms of approaching nutrition for busy moms and kids, and a little bit more specific around that. So thanks for hopping on today.
Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you. See you guys next time.